So here is Hunt now, going out in his new Wolf at Donington, but he was taking it slowly because there were some icy patches on the track, and the previous day Hunt had spun and locked the wheels, finishing up in the sand. Just before that incident, though, he was only seconds off the Donington track record, 3 seconds to be precise, and he was driving then on a full tank. In this testing session, Hunt had to handle the car very carefully because there was still some sand in the wheel bearings, and he could only manage, in fact, 2 laps. Indeed, when the Grand Prix season opens in Argentina on Sunday week, the new Wolf car will still be virtually untested. Well, Mike Smith asked James Hunt afterwards how the Donington sessions had gone. Here's what he had to say.
Feels very good. In fact, we've done as many laps as we need to here, or as many as we can find useful anyway, because with the weather being as it is, we can only really check the car out mechanically and engineering-wise, and in that respect, the car feels absolutely excellent. We now have to go somewhere where it's warmer, and we can run the car at full speed and in anger, and then we'll see just how quick it is.
Looking back over the past couple of years, since you won the World Championship on that memorable day in Japan in 1976, it's sort of seemed to slide downhill, the career. There have been peaks and troughs, and there seem to be more troughs than peaks. One of the peaks was like 1978, leading the Spanish Grand Prix for 6 laps. But generally...
Big deal.
Yeah, generally, it seems to have been sliding downhill, and I think in the eyes of the onlooker, it's not been a happy time for James Hunt from the outside. What's it been like on your side of it?
Well, it's never happy if you're not doing well. Of course, well, 77 was a better year than 76 in terms of the way the car ran on the track and my speed and things. We weren't very lucky with finishes, that was all. I led more miles and actually performed better relative to the others and had a more dominant season, but I didn't win, and that's the way it goes. 78, everything went wrong, and apart from anything else, you know, that was a depressing year. You can handle it going wrong if things are competitive and things, but it was depressing driving an uncompetitive car because all of a sudden the M26 wasn't really competitive with its rivals, and of course it's no fun competing for you know, a minor placing when you're used to competing to win. But apart from that, you know, that is the nature of the business. It's happened to me before. I mean, I've been driving and racing over 10 years now, and you know, racing has, as you say, peaks and troughs, and I just like to get out of the trough.
January 1978, Mario Andretti and his Lotus start as they mean to carry on and totally dominate the first Grand Prix of the year. Winning by over 13 seconds, Andretti establishes the pattern for the season. Of the 16 Grand Prix in 1978, half were won by Lotus. The drivers, Andretti and the late Ronnie Peterson, took the top 2 championship places, and Colin Chapman's brilliant design team established a new cliché in racing: ground effect. The art of creating low-pressure areas in the car's airstream, thereby sucking the vehicle onto the track. So advanced is the Lotus technology that this victory scene stands every chance of being repeated in 1979. Despite the introduction of several new cars, many people still believe that Lotus will be the car to beat, including James Hunt.
All we do know is that Lotus are very, very good. Goodyear and Michelin have produced new tyres. We don't know how well they will perform relative to each other. We don't know how well... Nearly every team has a new car. We don't know how well they will perform relative to each other and relative to the Lotus, which is the sort of anchor point for everybody because it's a dominant car.
And it's that dominant Lotus which seems to have spurred the design for Hunt's own 1979 car, the brand new Wolf WR7. From its Cosworth V8 engine right down to those ground effect side skirts, the new Wolf is undeniably Lotus-like. For James Hunt, it's a swan song season. After 6 years of Formula One, he's announced his intentions to retire at the end of 1979. Whether or not he takes a second world title to add to his 1976 crown depends largely upon the relationship he strikes up with his new team after 3 seasons with McLaren. The prospects aren't helped by the lack of testing. He spent just 1 full day with the new car, and his disappointing form in 1978 has cast doubts on his attitude. But the new team, new car and new season may rekindle the fire. The Formula One drivers in general have become less important this winter. Teams have paid more attention to designers and drawing boards. But for all this, there is only one radically new car to start the season. These are the first television pictures in the world of the new Brabham BT48. From the wingless tail to the tip of its carbon fibre nose, this 200-mile-an-hour projectile is unique. From drawing board to complete car in just 6 months is a great achievement for the Brabham team, especially as this car sports the first brand new 3-litre engine in Formula One for over 10 years. It's reckoned to be the most expensive Grand Prix car ever built, a superb example of the designer's art. The man who created the car is Gordon Murray.
Well, we've been forced into producing a conventional ground effect car after the fan car was banned. And what we've tried to do in our first car is take what we hope is a step or two ahead of Lotus by using the complete length of the car as a wing or a Venturi to create the ground effect and get the downforce, rather than just the bit between the wheels. So the wing section as such extends from just behind the front wheels right to the rear of the car, that therefore dispensing with a normal wing that you have on a racing car.
Last year's Murray-designed Brabhams did have wings, and they even introduced this fan car. The large fan at the rear sucked air from under the car, giving a greater cornering speed. It won this Swedish Grand Prix. Lawsuits were threatened from other teams, and the car was banned before it got another chance to blow Andretti off the track. And it was here that the drawing board battle began. So has the designer become a dominant force in motor racing?
I think as the sport has got more professional and more technical, and more people have become involved that know more about what they're doing, the design part of it has become more important, yes.
How important to you as the driver?
Well, very important, really, especially from a testing and development point of view, much more so than a race point of view these days, I think.
One man who might be saddened by that statement is Stirling Moss, one of the greatest names in motor racing. He came with us to try out the new Brabham for size. Stirling Moss, you last raced a Formula One car in 1962, and now...
Like this, actually.
And now we're 17 years on, you're back in the seat again, this time the new BT48. What are your views?
Absolutely stunning. I mean, it is a perfection. The way this thing is built, it is absolutely fantastic. I mean, the workmanship on it is like a Concorde. But sitting in it as a racing driver, I noticed I'm far forward, but what really impresses me is when I look how far back it goes. I mean, it's like an Arctic, you know. Really is big.
Yeah, someone has already nicknamed it the truck, actually.
Well,
It really
it's
is
a beautiful handling truck, I should think.
Stirling, all this development, you've watched a lot going on over the past few years.
Yeah.
Going back to your days as a driver, I mean, would you be happy with all this development going on around you? Could you keep pace with it?
I think, yes, I'm sure I'd be happy because it's such a perfect car, but I think that one is becoming a little bit too much of the designer who's mattering. How much am I left to be able to contribute to this fantastic projectile? You see, when I used to race, you get a car and you would, by your ability, compensate for shortcomings. Now, vehicles of this type obviously have far less shortcomings. They're much better. Therefore, how much am I contributing? And I don't mean the driver doesn't contribute, because I think a driver contributes the most important part. But somehow this is a drawing room, you know, sort of race, isn't it?
Would you say that this type of car is easier to drive than the cars of your day?
No, I don't think any car of this potential is easy. No, I would think probably, though, that it is very much, they must be much closer. I think that in some ways easier, but when you're taking a car of this speed potential and you go around a corner 180, boy, that's never easy.
Stirling, the racing that we're getting these days, away from the drawing boards and away from the designers, getting out onto the track, do you think Formula One racing is everything it used to be?
It isn't everything it used to be, it's different. I think that you get closer racing and in many ways better racing, but I think you lose the passion and you lose the glory, if you like. When you see one of the big cars, and these are obviously very big as well, but one of the older cars come around in a four-wheel slide, the back end breaking away, a bit of opposite lock, and you could see a guy like Gonzalez, boy, that was impressive. Now, these are impressive, but in quite a different way, and so I think you're losing some of the fire and the passion that we used to have.
Now, looking in towards 1979, the season that's coming up, how do you see 1979 shaping up for the various teams and drivers?
I think everybody is clamouring to copy Lotus. I think the thing that they've got to remember, we've all got to remember, is that that was the Lotus of last year. Now, I don't mean the new Lotus will be that different. It probably will be very, very different. But the point is, Colin Chapman learnt a lot. And what he learnt, he knows, and he doesn't stand still. He hasn't sort of said, well, that's what I'm going to race next year. He's obviously working with it. And I think people are going to find that the problems that Colin had, they're going to get. I think equally we have drivers, people like Villeneuve, who are going to be tremendously competitive. And Carlos Reutemann. You're going to have people like Mario Andretti, who is still world champion and obviously one of the top in the world. I think he's going to find that the other people have come up with cars that are more similar to his, but how much will Colin be able to help keep his cars ahead? I think it's going to be a tremendously interesting season, actually.
James Hunt's chances for this year, with his move from McLaren across to Wolf, a new car, untested, what do you think?
I think he has to be an outsider. I really do. I think that you've got, as you say, you've got a new team, a new car, obviously a very good car, but other cars have developed so much. I mean, look at this car. This is an incredible machine. Is it going to work? Will it work early enough? There's a lot of questions we've got to have answered.
James has moved into Wolf, Jody Scheckter's moved out of Wolf and gone to Ferrari to join Villeneuve. What do you think of the Ferrari setup?
I still take Ferrari as a very likely winner, actually, and I must say I think Gilles Villeneuve is the most potential outside non-world champion class, if you like, or a driver